Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special episode of Uncanny Treks. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. And tonight we are doing a special epilogue to our Jonathan Hickman Avengers run. We finished it. We did, God, I don't remember, 20 episodes or something about Avengers. But don't worry, listeners. It's short, it's just 4 issues. Also, let me assure you, if you have not read the whole Hickman run, you do not need to read the whole Hickman run at all to understand this. You might as well just go ahead and read this and enjoy it with us. This is Alien versus Avengers. It came out in 2024 and also maybe a little bit in 2025. Like I said, I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right, Bob. I agree with Bob in saying that you do not have to have read all of the Hickman Avengers. However, I think Bob's going to be in for a rude awakening when he realizes that this was not my favorite Hickman Avengers in any sense of the word.
That sucks, Matt.
If you're picking this up and you think this is Hickman Avengers and what it's going to be, don't judge it based just on that.
Oh, man, that sucks, man.
I'm giving you an early warning, Bob. I'm giving you an early warning.
One of the reasons why I like it better, it's consistent art, which large parts of the Hickman run, for understandable reasons, couldn't have. But we have Asad Ribic on the art, who also did the art for Secret Wars. But Matt, I like this way better than Secret Wars. I got to tell you, dog.
Wow. Yeah, that's not for me. No, I disagree on that. I do admit, though, the art is wonderful. I love the art. The art's great.
I'm just like, this is much more concentrated than Secret Wars. And as such, it can have much more interesting themes and much more interesting development. Whereas Secret Wars is of necessity so bloated.
So you're slightly high off the recent Alien television show, Bob.
Oh, shut up.
You just wanted more, and you found it.
For listeners who don't know, I loathe the recent Alien TV show. I think it's one of the worst shows I've ever seen. It, in fact, makes me question. I would previously have told you that Noah Hawley's shows Legion and Fargo were two of the best shows, certainly of the century, two of my favorite shows in general. And now Alien Earth is so bad, it's making me reluctant to return to Fargo and Legion because were they actually terrible? Was I actually stupid and misled?
Yeah, so, Bob, do you think that maybe the punch to the gut you got from that particular show is why you enjoyed this so much better? Because it's more of the aliens you have come to love and know.
Honestly, I do enjoy the many callbacks to the Alien franchise from this, but no, I think the aliens themselves are rather secondary to my enjoyment of this for the same reason that I like Hickman's Doom one-shot, in that both deal very effectively with post-apocalyptic or end-of-the-world situations. And I like the themes Hickman gets out of that. At the risk of being cheesy or too relevant, the themes Hickman's getting out of his post-apocalyptic comics feel very appropriate for present-day global politics.
Wow, Bob. Sense of realism there for you. It's scary.
Realism as such, but appreciation of the seriousness and the intractability of our problems.
So you don't think that Mars is going to be overrun by a colony of Mr. Sinisters that have merged with xenomorphs?
I wish it would. That sounds cool, man.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool, Bob.
Between Elon Musk on Mars or xenomorphs on Mars, not that Elon Musk is going to go to Mars, folks, I got news for you. But if it were possible, wouldn't you rather have xenomorphs on Mars than Elon Musk?
I'd definitely rather have Mr. Sinisters on Mars than Elon Musk.
He's got to find creative things to do with the Martian dust. So to start with issue number 1, what goes down, and these issues are not titled, which is a good choice when you're doing the visual presentation, does make it a little annoying to podcast about. But what goes down in issue number 1, Matt?
Well, Bob, Earth has been chosen as a seed world, and several xenomorph eggs have been deployed.
I wanted to fast forward to the introduction of T'Challa and Azari. And specifically, if listeners are reading along with us, they might want to go to page 10 of issue number 1. And I did want to actually take a minute to slightly correct myself. So we have Azari here. He's the son of T'Challa and Storm, and he's part of the next Avengers. And we talked about the next Avengers in Avengers World. They time traveled and showed up in the present in that comic. And I did a little more research on it. And as far as I can tell, the next Avengers are from an animated straight-to-DVD movie of the same name in the late aughts. But when we were talking about the next Avengers in Avengers World, I messed up, and I confused them with a different version of the future kids of the Avengers. That's the Avengers Next. Not the next Avengers, but the Avengers Next. And the Avengers Next are from the Spider-Girl comics. And the Spider-Girl comics, I think, started in the late 90s. So I just want to be clear. Azari is from Next Avengers, not Avengers Next and Spider-Girl. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the team that was in Hickman's book that we read a while back, this is where he is from.
Yeah, he is from that, and what Hickman was a co-writer on that book, although it might be slightly more accurate to say it was Nick Spencer's book. But yeah, that was not the first time they showed up in the comics. They showed up at some point in the Brian Bendis Avengers comics before that.
For listeners who may be out of the loop here, we do need to let anyone who hasn't read Hickman's run that due to some time travel shenanigans, the Wakandan people are now space travelers.
Indeed, which we see at the end of Secret Wars, right? At the start of the Wakandan space program. And so we see the payoff here. And then, yeah, listeners, if you're curious, you could go listen to our episode on Avengers World, which is not one of our best episodes, but it is interesting to, what was it, an 18-part comic?
Just to fill you in, so you can get caught up on what's going on with T'Challa in space.
All right. Well, Matt, speaking of T'Challa in space, my favorite panel of issue number 1 is when we see old T'Challa deduce that this Shi'ar scientist he's talking to is really an android, which obviously an homage to many scenes in the Alien franchise. A cool moment of basically T'Challa being Sherlock Holmes in space.
It is interesting to see T'Challa and the Hatut Zarazi in this different position where they're going out in space to capture people. It's just different. It reminds me a little bit of Starship Troopers, the way their gear is set up and everything.
That's a good call. Maybe it's meant to call back to Halo and things like that.
Yes, fascinating to see it such a different perspective when originally you think of these guys as jungle warriors, and then here you've got them in space.
There's something about the Hatut Zarazi's White Panther suits that do look already a bit space suits.
It makes sense because space is black. To have something to stick out and stand out.
It's a nice and strong visual contrast. Another thing I wanted to flag was on page 16, we get the title page for the book, and Hickman, for the font and the screen presentation, is imitating the screens of Mother, the computer from the original Alien ship, which I thought was a nice little treat.
Yeah, it's got that late 70s, 80s computer aesthetic that I think they thought was going to stick around. There's actually some banks, Bob, that still use this type of banking software that has this kind of look to it.
I bet if Regions was still around, it would also still use that.
The only real difference, though, Bob, is that they use that shade of yellow, whereas the banks and stuff that you still use that software, I think it's green.
As we keep going, we have scenes, and this is page 20, where it's like Adelon, Atlantis, and Wakanda are all being put under siege from the Xenomorphs, which we get some cool images on that page. Then on the next page, we see, and this is, in some ways, the joke here is, when we were talking about Secret Wars, I was constantly saying that Secret Wars felt more an end to Hickman's Fantastic Four comic than his Avengers comic. Oh. And in a funny way, this comic, and we'll really get into this in later issues, feels more an end to Hickman's X-Men run. On 21, we see that the mutants have fled to Araco on Mars, which is a major part of Hickman's X-Men run, but Apocalypse stays behind on Krakoa to fight the Xenomorphs, which is a nice scene as well.
This wasn't my favorite panel, but it is really cool to see Apocalypse in front of the big tree. That's supposed to represent either Groot or Krakoa. And then you've got definitely Krakoa. Definitely Krakoa. Yeah. But you have to admit, Bob, it does have that Groot look to it. It is Krakoa, you're right. And then you've got Apocalypse.
Well, and it is. You make a good point, right? Because in the Hickman Avengers, he uses Groot in ways in the future that he would later use Krakoa in the X-Men run. So I don't think we made as much of that as we could have in that episode on that where Hickman's Avengers go to the future, but it's definitely a connection worth making.
Bob, the Apocalypse on this page is badass when he cuts this Xenomorph's head. Doesn't cut it off. He cuts the long part in half with his sword.
On the next page, Matt, 22, did you catch initially that this old man of Wayland was Tony Stark? When we first saw him, I was, okay, he's an old man in a wheelchair. There's quite a few people that could be. And later it becomes clear in the story, right? But in the first issue, they don't refer to him as Tony. And I had to go into the issue on the wiki to clarify, okay, actually it is Tony.
They don't, and that was intentional. And that's when I first started disliking this comic.
Man, Matt just really hates withheld information.
My brain is a bald guy, wheelchair. We automatically think of Professor X. But then my brain is, this is 2024. Is Professor X alive? Because he's one that's constantly either, you never know if he's alive or dead.
He's not doing stereotypical Professor X. It also could have been Reed Richards or Hank Pym, reasonably. Yeah. Tony was definitely the number one suspect, but it reasonably could have been Hank or Reed as well. On the next page, we get more Old Man Bruce Banner explaining how Reed and Valeria lost the Richards family, how everybody got. And then as the comic continues, it is interesting. I would definitely say this comic has more connections with Hickman's X-Men run than anything else. But it does a little bit reform the Fantastic Four in that you have Valeria, Old Man Bruce, Old Lady Carol Danvers, and then adult Miles Morales are almost a Fantastic Four.
Yeah, you really do. And I do want to
Yeah.
point out too that the way that Bruce Banner is drawn as an old man, he looks like the Hulk, but
Mm.
old. Did you catch that? Look at his face and his head shape.
Yeah.
It's like he grew older and decided he's just going to stick with the Hulk look.
Yeah, he grew into the Hulk.
Yeah,
Like people come to look like their pets.
exactly.
Also worth noting the egg we have in this issue here, Valeria steals a xenomorph egg. In the Secret Wars early stages, Cyclops has a Phoenix egg. And then we have also in Hickman's X-Men series, there's an alien MacGuffin that's connected to his independent comic decorum. And so Hickman likes his eggs. What can we say?
He definitely does. And I was happy to see Valeria again in the Future Foundation outfit.
My favorite line of the issue came shortly after this, where it's Carol tells Hulk, Bruce, there's no worse, Bruce. Let Valeria try this. I thought was a good line. The post-apocalyptic themes of the comic coming through. What was your favorite panel?
My favorite panel is on page 40, where a facehugger grabs Miles Morales. That leads to the end of the issue, Bob, which leaves us on a cliffhanger, which I thought was the coolest part of this issue. We find out that the symbiote actually is more powerful than the facehugger when it comes to aliens. He overpowers him and then rebonds with Miles.
Yeah. Although he has the xenomorph incorporated within him, like
Within,
the
yeah,
symbiote here.
right.
It's Miles, there's him, there's a symbiote, and there's also a xenomorph contained within the symbiote.
Yeah, 3 different things going on with Miles now.
It reminds you that Miles and the symbiote and the xenomorph's pronouns are they, them, not because they're non-binary, but because there's 3 of them, Matt. There's literally 3 of them.
There's 3 of them all together.
Moving on to issue number 2, Matt, what goes down in issue number 2?
The Avengers determine they are going to leave Earth and travel to Mars.
My favorite line in this issue comes pretty early on, page 12, and this is the head Wayland android talking to old man Tony, and he describes himself as death from a bullet fired before you even understood the idea of a gun, which will become a motif throughout the rest of this comic.
Right.
Matt, my guess at your favorite panel was when Carol's war machines blow the walls around the city that the last surviving Avengers humans are hanging out in. And I assumed you would enjoy the Secret Wars and Game of Thrones vibes at this moment.
I did feel that to some degree because it did harken back to the whole War Machine thing where there were all the multiple War Machines, but no, that wasn't quite my favorite panel.
Less the war machine and more the stuff about the walls.
About the walls, bringing the walls down. Like, I could see that, but it's not my favorite panel, Bob, no.
Brutal. Well, Matt, my favorite panel was when we see old man Captain America posing to delay the xenomorphs, and he's yelling at this crowd of people he's bringing in at the last moment for Tony to evacuate. Everyone keep going. I'll do what I can. That's a very Captain America way to go out, right?
It really is. My favorite panel, Bob, was a little later on where Old Man Cap is looking at Old Man Hulk and they arrive to help with the xenomorphs. Old Man Hulk comes down and he is bashing the crap out of the xenomorphs. It is violent. And there's these crazy poses of xenomorphs gripping onto the Hulk from around his waist, around his arms, his shoulders, and he's tearing them to shreds. There's also a really good panel, too, where Cap throws his shield that bounces off a bunch of stuff and bounces off several xenomorphs. A classic Cap thing, but here it's even better.
It's funny to see it bouncing off a xenomorph skull instead of a wall, right?
Correct.
The setup for this scene is also nice, right? Because Tony and Carol are really trying to get Bruce to not go down and help Steve out because it's clearly suicide. But Bruce just insists on doing it. It sets up with the themes of fatalism and doomed effort that are so much a part of this and so much a part of Hickman's Doom one-shot. So, Matt, what's the cliffhanger for issue number 2?
So we have the engineers from Prometheus are watching, and you see them at the very end.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
What goes down in issue number 3 then, Matt?
Well, Bob, in issue 3, the Earth colony ship actually lands on Mars, only to discover something sinister is afoot.
Man, I like your double pun. So, Matt, my guess at your favorite panel was relatively early on, page 14, and in very similar language to the android in the first Alien movie, we see Mr. Sinister exulting in the glory of the xenomorph. I thought that would be your favorite panel.
That's not my favorite panel, Bob. My favorite panel does include Mr. Sinister, though, and it's probably the best panel in this entire issue.
Nice.
My favorite panel is on page 13, Bob. Tony Stark reveals that his chair is actually Iron Man armor. That was cool. That was going to be my
Okay.
favorite panel. It was going to
But
be.
then something else happens, becomes both yours and my
We are
favorite actual.
both, we both love this panel, and it's the best panel in the entire 4-issue run.
It's Mr. Sinister has adapted to the Xenomorph, and he is charging and firing, and he is yelling, "It's a gun that shoots facehuggers."
And the way his face is drawn is amazing. He's so happy to be shooting facehuggers. And all of his Sinister clones have facehugger guns too. So they're having a good old time. I
And this
want a
also-
facehugger gun. I want one so bad.
You want a Xenomorph gun.
Yeah.
This also leads into my favorite line a couple pages later where Mr. Sinister just says, "I defeat Darwin," which
Yeah.
is a pretty great mantra for the character. Matt, another possibility I thought might be your favorite panel is we have the reveal that there are a few surviving X-Men, specifically Old Lady Emma Frost, Old Man Wolverine, Manifold, and Armor all rescue Carol Danvers. And I thought that might be your favorite panel, but I guess no.
No, but it was cool for them to show up. And I will say, White Queen keeping Diamond form, I guess that's how she keeps her looks. That must be really neat. We all need
Yeah,
a Diamond
yeah.
form. Let's take that power and get that.
It makes total sense that Emma Frost and Armor are two of the only survivors, right? Both have these impenetrable barriers they
Correct.
put up against the Xenomorph. It also ties back interestingly. I don't know if you remember this in the late 80s Claremont run, they make a big deal of Wolverine and Carol Danvers having a long prequel history of being spies together.
Uh-huh.
It is funny to have Wolverine and Captain Marvel together again at the end.
Seeing them both together, it's different. I like the design of Wolverine here too. The old man look with the beard, and he's using the brown yellow outfit.
That's a different look than you get from other versions of Old Man Logan. So what's the cliffhanger for issue number 3, Matt?
Well, Bob, at the end of issue number 3, the surviving X-Men discover Tony's corpse, and then the Wakandans return.
What goes down in issue number 4?
Well, Bob, the Wakanda returns, but Sinister becomes a Xenomorph hybrid.
Matt, so my guess at your favorite panel was very early in number 4. It's the 3rd page, and my guess was when we see the baby Xenomorph with the Sinister diamond on its forehead. I thought that might be your favorite panel.
That was an awesome panel, yes, because the baby Xenomorph is so happy. But then directly below that, the Sinister that's talking at that point has his eyes wide open, and his eyes are blood red but spinning because he's so excited that he has created this.
That's good. My favorite line is a little after this, and it's relevant to Wakanda returning, and it's from Carol's narration, where she says, "Surprise was always the Wakandan way." That was a good line.
Which leads up to my favorite panel, Bob, on page 13, when Emperor T'Challa, he drops in like he's from G.I. Joe. It's crazy.
Go ahead.
And there's this ship up in the sky. The G.I. Joe people had an airship, and they would repel from it. It's exactly what he's doing here.
On the one hand, Matt, I can't argue with the aptness of your comparisons. You've compared the Wakandans in this comic to Starship Troopers, to G.I. Joe. I built off that and compared it to Halo, and you're absolutely right about that. But on the other hand, I want to criticize you for making me like the Wakandans less, because you're connecting the Wakandans to all these franchises I don't care for.
That's what they've turned him into, Bob.
This is part of Matt's subtle psychological campaign to get me to devalue this comic. That's what Matt's doing.
I'm telling you, the comic wasn't bad, Bob. I don't want to say that. It's just based on everything we've read from Hickman. It's just not the same.
No, Matt, you're gaslighting me. You're gaslighting. That's what you're
No.
doing. My other guess for your favorite panel for this issue, which you've already told us what it was, but my other guess was going to be when we see T'Challa about to behead an engineer. I thought that was really cool.
It was pretty cool, Bob. I have to admit that we have a lot of beheadings going on in these issues.
T'Challa wants to chop off engineers' heads, androids' heads, xenomorphs' heads, and I'm here for it. Another great line from this comic is a little later on page 22, where T'Challa paraphrases Ripley from, I think, the second Alien movie, where Ripley and now T'Challa says, "Nuke the entire site from orbit," as a way to deal with the xenomorphs. It's a great line.
Do you feel this level of intensity from the xenomorphs versus what we just read about with everything else in Hickman's run? Does it seem on the same level of urgency? Well, there's definitely urgency, but I feel like this should have been easier for them to take care of.
I think I just like the Alien movies a lot more than you do.
I'm starting to feel this way, Bob. That's what it boils down to.
That's part of it. But I would also say the aliens to me are much more interesting because they're a physical threat, Matt. Whereas I don't like the Beyonders. I don't care about the Beyonders. I don't really understand what the Beyonders are doing. The idea of destroying a world is, I don't know, it's interesting, but it's also very abstract and very weird comic book made up physics.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, obviously xenomorphs are also an absurd idea on their face, but there's something visceral and palpable and tangible and understandable about the xenomorph. Whereas the death of the multiverse, that's painfully abstract.
Xenomorphs aren't on their face, they're on your face, Bob.
Exactly, Matt. They're on our face,
Good.
all of our faces. I did have another guess at what I thought would actually, and a lot of times when I guess Matt's favorite panel, I'm slightly trolling him. But in this one, I was like dead serious that I thought you would love this. That we have a sinister xenomorph who is not said, but clearly has Nightcrawler's DNA. And in order to kill Armor, the sinister xenomorph bamfs inside of Armor's armor, which was an amazing moment.
That is really cool. I have to admit. You see Wolverine going to do his claw into the back type thing, and you see the words BAMF. Then Wolverine's face is shocked. Then Armor's next thing you know, oh, she's not doing
Yep.
too well.
The call is coming from inside the armor. My favorite panel this issue, Matt, is when Emma's commenting that the venoms that got birthed from Tony Stark, she's observing it interact with the sinister xenomorph, and she's, yeah, it's alphaing the sinister xenomorph, and that really made me laugh.
I guess the red ones are stronger than the black ones, but the red ones with the diamond on their head are even more powerful. We need an alien chart of which aliens are stronger than the others.
What's a little bit a rock, paper, scissors thing? Sinister beats Xenomorph, Symbiote beats Sinister. It's not entirely rock, paper, scissors, but you get the idea.
That could be a fun game. We should invent that.
This could easily be terrible, but the idea of doing Mr. Sinister and the symbiotes, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Hickman, Mr. Sinister, that could be fun.
You could have a lot of fun with that. And a lot of characters, I don't know anything about any of the symbiotes other than Venom and Carnage.
Well, you don't need to know anything about them beyond Venom and Carnage.
But Mr. Sinister comic book, that could do it, Bob.
And we're just seeing him experiment on them.
No.
See him use a clone with a symbiote, something like that.
That'd be cool.
Get on it, Hickman.
Make it 3 years run.
All right, Matt. So I've mostly been emphasizing the lack of links or the disparities between this and Hickman's Avengers run. But I did want to ask, does the way Hickman present the Avengers really remind you of how he presents the Beyonders and Time Runs Out?
The way they show up and get their kicked.
They're both giant white aliens, but then there's also the thing that they're both like ultimate trump card, right? So Doom outfoxes the Beyonders and T'Challa and the Avengers more or less outfox.
Let me ask you this, Bob. If they didn't have the alien license in this comic book and they had to go with generic.
Oh, it's not a matter of having the alien license anymore because Disney bought Fox. In the past, it would have been the license, but now it's the Xenomorph is a Disney princess. Tony Stark is a Disney princess.
Oh, wow. Let's pretend for a moment that they were using generic aliens that didn't have a history that you were familiar with. Would this have been as entertaining?
You could have done this with the Brood and I still would have liked it. That's the funny thing is Chris Claremont liked the movie Alien so much, he did it at least twice during his first X-Men run. He did it with the Brood, and then he also did it with, you know how there's Demons in the Woods by Xavier Mansion? He did it with like a demon in the woods stalking Kitty Pryde in the mansion too. So in an interesting way, yeah, you could just do this with the Demons from the Woods or with the Brood or with something else in the Marvel Universe. And I would still like it. If the end of the Avengers, the end of Earth in the Marvel Universe is just the Brood overwhelming Earth, that's cool to me.
When we do get to the end of this comic, we don't have a time stone or anything to fix things.
I did want to ask at the end, Matt, we have the survivors going out into the galaxy to hunt down more xenomorphs. They're literalizing the name of the Avengers, right? They're going to avenge the Earth, which is, maybe they do this other places, but the other time I think of this is at the end of the first Avengers movie where Robert Downey Jr. says something really cheesy to the effect of, we may not be able to save the Earth, but we can avenge it. Do you have an opinion about when the movies or the shows or the comics literalize the name Avengers? I always find it really cheesy. Obviously, they're called the Avengers. You can't call them anything else, but I would prefer to not have an explanation of why they're called the Avengers and to not literalize it. I wondered what's your perspective on that was.
It's incredibly cheesy. I do not like it. I do it myself, though. Be funny. I'm sure you and I drop things like that all the time to be funny, but like in the comic where it's meant to be more of a serious tone to it.
It's just one of those things of, I'm not criticizing Stan and Jack for calling the book The Avengers because
it's a fine name,
title.
Yes.
But it's one of those things that if you actually unpack what it means, it doesn't sit very well with how we would like superheroes to be, right?
Yeah, they're not really avenging anything in the original.
exactly.
But then it's just
It is very
unnecessary to
cheesy.
say all that.
I do find that ending note to be a little bit unfortunate and not as accomplished as the ending note of the Doom one shot that Hickman did with Sanford Green, if that makes sense.
If it was Star-Lord saying it with a smirk on his face, whatever. But here, it's Tony Stark's will.
That would be thematically appropriate if it were Star-Lord with a smirk on his face, but that would also be annoying. Before we get into the question of the ranking, I did want to ask, reading this comic, did it change your perspective about Secret Wars or about House of X or about the Doom one shot? I really like how it both resonated with and in a way is a nice end to Hickman's massive run at Marvel with Fantastic Four, Avengers, and X-Men. But it sounds like for you, it was more disposable, throw two things together and watch them fight.
Very much a disposable, throw two things together, watch them fight. I would have enjoyed it more had we not covered this immediately after doing Hickman's long run.
Oh, that's
I think
interesting.
revisiting this era maybe a year or two later in this comic, I would have enjoyed it more.
Ah, that's interesting.
So thanks, Bob. I really appreciate that.
Matt, that's kind of the whole gimmick is that compressed time on the
Yeah.
podcast. This came out 10 years after Secret Wars.
Right. So people had
So-
a chance to reset their palate for a moment. And this was more of a reintroduction that a lot of people went back to this. Were like, oh yeah, I forgot Black Panther was in space doing Mars stuff. And we're doing this with Hickman. It really is it's an Elseworld what if type thing in my head canon.
All right. So my initial proposal for ranking this was going to be at the new number 6. Listeners, we have a 25 item list. The number 1 is John Hickman, Fantastic Four. The bottom 3 are the 3 different writers' runs on Gotham Knights, the early aughts Batman title. My proposal was going to be number 6, which is beneath the Walt Simonson Fantastic Four run and above the Jonathan Hickman Avengers, New Avengers, and Secret Wars epic. I sometimes favor concentration over breadth, Matt, I must say. But it sounds like you strongly disagree.
Oh, I strongly disagree with you, Bob. I'm not going to put it number 6. If you want to put it somewhere, I would put it after Archie versus Predator, above Batman City of Madness. I liked Archie versus Predator better than this.
Okay, I can respect in some ways that, especially the first Archie versus Predator, in some ways is a better intercompany crossover.
And that's what I'm saying, especially if you're looking at it from a crossover perspective, that is a better crossover than this.
Do you think that Archie versus Punisher and Batman versus Punisher, do you also think those are better intercompany crossovers?
No. Not with Hickman at the helm. That's the other thing I take into consideration of what they've done.
I don't think you should take the writer. You should just think of the story.
So you just want me to think of the story itself.
On the story level, on the heart level, do you prefer Archie versus Punisher, Punisher versus Batman, or do you prefer Alien versus Avengers?
Okay. Archie versus Punisher and Batman, I like this more than the Avengers. All right,
Okay.
DC and Streets of Gotham. This is better than that. It's better than Paul Dini's work.
Now that you say this gets the absurdity of the rankings, right? But even though in a way Alien versus Avengers is better than the Hickman run, not the least because it's more concentrated,
Right.
I don't actually think this is better than Christian Ward's Batman City of Madness.
Okay.
So that's City of Madness by Christian Ward. The Batman Elseworld is number 8. We would put this at the new number 9 above Paul Dini's Detective and Streets of Gotham run at number 10. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great. Yes, that's much better. I can live with that. I can sleep at night, Bob. Thanks.
All right. Well, Matt, I still can't sleep at night because Hush is still sitting way too high on this list for my taste.
Well, I told you, Bob, we'll reevaluate Hush when Hush 2 is finally completed.
Wait, but is it ever going to be complete, Matt? And if it is going to be completed, it's going to be in 5 years.
We'll switch it up, Bob, in 5 years. Don't worry.
An open wound on my arm, Matt. And in a way, it's worse because before you tease the possibility of reevaluating Hush, I hadn't made my peace with it. It always irritated me. But the fact that Hush was at now the number 12 on our list, it was always there, but I accepted that it was there. Now I know it can change, but it's going to take years for it.
It definitely will, Bob. So, real quick, do you see anything else on our list that you think is way off?
No, what do you think's way off?
Oh, I don't right now at the moment.
Not everything is where I personally would have put it, but
it's
it
reasonable.
makes sense.
Yeah.
If somebody looked at this list without listening to our thing and they saw where Infinity Gauntlet is, they would probably think that's way too low. And I respect that opinion, but I just don't share it.
I agree with that, Bob, because after reading all the other great stuff that came out after it.
That person might reply that how great really is the John Ridley Black Panther or the Paul Dini Gotham City Sirens or the Matt Wagner Dr. Midnight? And I would say that's a fair point, but I still enjoy all of this more than Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, I would still probably pick those up too for Infinity Gauntlet. All right, Bob.
All right. Well, listeners, that has been our coverage of Alien versus Avengers. Matt, I am sorry you didn't enjoy that as much as I hoped you would. I'll bear that in mind that sometimes maybe Matt likes a break from the continuation. I'll bear that in mind. But listeners, this has been Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. We're about to start our Al Ewing Avengers coverage, which is a spinoff of our Hickman Avengers coverage. Then we'll be done with Avengers. I swear to God. Have a great night, everyone.
Swear to doom, Bob. All right. Thanks for listening.